The fall of the empire wasn't a tragedy for the men who came next. It was their greatest success. A new elite of lords and bishops saw a world of complex knowledge and individual thought, not as a civilization to be saved, but as a threat to be dismantled. So they lit the match. They didn't just let the libraries burn, they fanned the flames. They engineered the disease, the terror, the ignorance, the division, and then they walked out of the smoke, selling the only cure, a feudal system of absolute control and a religious doctrine of absolute obedience. The hissing sound is a secret you pray the walls will keep. It's the sound of a demon, they would say, a serpent trapped in boiling water. But you know it is merely the sound of a future that is not allowed to be born. In the damp chill of your hidden workshop, lit by a single sputtering tallow lamp, the thing gleams. This is the secret that changes everything. They call this a dark age to make you believe the world shrank, that knowledge was lost in the ruin of Rome. But the knowledge wasn't lost. It was buried, hidden. This map whispers of Roman galleys and Phoenician sailors who charted the stars, who knew the world was a sphere, who had touched shores that are now forbidden to even imagine. This knowledge was deliberately erased. The church built a smaller cage for your mind because a small world is an obedient one. It wasn't forgotten in a slow, gentle decline. It was murdered. On the surface, zealots were burning the world's wisdom, condemning libraries as pagan and philosophy as heresy. Books were the enemy and fire was the sacrament. They wanted to create a new world built on a foundation of ignorance and obedience, but they failed. Down here, in the veins of the earth, a desperate act of intellectual resistance was underway. A secret network of scholars, disillusioned Romans who saw their culture being erased, heretics hunted for their beliefs, pagan philosophers who refused to kneel, created an underground railroad for knowledge. The world didn't fall, it was pushed. 99% of people will tell you the Dark Ages were an accident, a slow, sad decay. The truth is far more sinister. The greatest economic freedom humanity had ever known was deliberately strangled in its sleep, and the murder weapon was a piece of iron in a warlord's hand. You stand in what used to be a marketplace. Your memory, a ghost in itself, can still conjure the scent of Egyptian dates and Gallic wine. It feared this room. It's a pattern that has never vanished. It's the gnawing feeling you get today when a whistleblower is discredited as unstable, or a scientist presenting inconvenient climate data is ridiculed by corporate-funded media. The attack is never on the information itself, but on the vessel that carries it. They invent a new word for heretic, conspiracy theorist, crank, fake news, but the fire is the same. The goal is the same, not to win the argument, but to silence the arguer. The complete disappearance of this recipe, used for centuries to build the arteries of an empire, wasn't an accident. It was a policy, a conspiracy of silence enacted across an entire continent. The old man who taught you the mixture, a traveler with eyes that had seen the world burn, called it opus caementicium. He spoke of other secrets too. Glass that could bend like iron, a distillation process that could pull fresh water from the sea with nothing but sunlight. He told you this knowledge was a human right, not a privilege of kings. The cold stone under your feet feels different now. The scent of wood smoke and damp earth no longer smells of survival. It smells of control. You look up from the flickering flame of a single tallow candle, and you finally see the architecture of the cage. The chaos wasn't an accident. The famine wasn't a failure of the harvest. The fear wasn't a byproduct of the dark. They were tools. This is the secret they buried under the ruins of Rome. The 99% of people will live and die without ever knowing. They didn't bury the old god. They just built a roof over him and called it a church. And as you bow your head, you can't help but wonder, if the very foundation of God's house is a calculated deception, what other lies are holding up the world? What dark truth is the king hiding behind his divine right? And what forbidden knowledge did the midwives take to the fire? It is a world that keeps you on your knees. But this map is heresy made manifest. It shows a coastline that curves impossibly south, a vast sweep of land where Alcuin's boiling seas should be, a continent of ice, but drawn without the ice, as if the cartographers saw it in a forgotten, warmer age. It shows an island chain 1,000 leagues to the west, a place that cannot exist, a place the word of God has never reached. This map doesn't have Jerusalem at its center. It has no center at all. They are stacked, floor to ceiling, with scrolls, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. Their wooden end caps are labeled in Greek, in Latin, in languages you don't even recognize. Your light pans across the titles, and your mind struggles to comprehend what you're seeing. Treatises on medicine by Galen, thought lost to the fires. Engineering schematics for aqueducts. Forbidden philosophical arguments from the Stoics. This isn't a burial chamber, it's a library. A secret, impossible library. This is what 99% of people will never understand about the so-called Dark Ages. The knowledge of the old world wasn't simply lost. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. We can read it, not in their books, but in the stars. Someone in the corner begins to weep, a soft, choked sound. The whispers that follow aren't prayers. You hear words you don't understand. Radius, velocity, ellipse. A man next to you scratches furiously on a slate with a piece of charcoal, his fingernails scraping against the rough surface, the sound setting your teeth on edge. He is not writing scripture. He is performing a calculation. This is the true ritual here. This is the forbidden magic. The church didn't fear their souls. It feared their minds, their food, their future. Why let a community build for eternity when you can make them dependent on your temporary, crumbling solutions? This isn't just about stone and ash. It's the ancient equivalent of a modern corporation buying the patent for an engine that runs on water, only to lock it in a vault forever. It's about burying a cure because the disease is more profitable. The powerful don't just write history, they edit the list of what is possible, erasing anything that threatens their place at the top of the page. A cabal with the patience to poison an entire millennium for what it believed was right. Would they ever truly disappear? Or would they just change their name? You stare at the words on the screen, and you realize they aren't a confession from a dead monk. They're a warning, and you have no idea who else is reading it. You can't tear a god out of the human heart, but you can give it a new name, a new story, and a slightly different uniform, and hope no one notices the seam where the old truth was stitched into the new lie. The priest chants in Latin, a language you can't understand, his voice echoing off stone that was once painted with spirals and suns. You look back up at the saint with his impossible wheel. It's a secret hidden in plain sight, a confession carved in stone for anyone brave enough to see it. This is not the world Father Alcuin draws on the floor with chalk for the village children. His world is a perfect circle, a holy disk. In the center, a lovingly drawn Jerusalem. Around it, the three known lands, Europe, Asia, Africa, given to the three sons of Noah. And at the edges, a great impassable ocean where the sea boils and krakens drag ships to hell. Hic sunt dracones. Here be dragons. That is your world, a tidy, theological terrarium designed by God, patrolled by his angels, and besieged by his demons. It is small, knowable, and terrifying. You have to turn sideways, your shoulder brushing against the damp, cool rock. A sound echoes from up ahead. It's not the drip of water or the scuttling of rats. It's the faint, dry rustle of papyrus. You hold your breath, the metallic taste of fear coating your tongue. You push forward, the light of your torch spilling into a small circular chamber, and you stop. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drum in the sacred quiet. This is no tomb. The niches carved into the walls are not filled with bones. You think of the herbs she collects by moonlight. You see the baker, and you don't think of warm bread. You think of his son, the one who recovered from the sweating sickness when 3 others died. Was it a miracle or a pact? You push open your door. The air inside is heavy. Your daughter, your sweet girl, is lying on the pallet, her face flushed a damning shade of red. She's coughing, a small, weak sound that echoes the priest's sermon in your head. A fever, a sign. Your mind reels, trying to reconcile this image with the world you know, a flat, holy stage upon which the drama of salvation unfolds, with God's eye fixed firmly upon its center. This scroll doesn't just challenge a chapter of Scripture. It incinerates the entire book. It suggests a universe not of divine whim, but of mathematical precision, an indifferent, mechanical cosmos. Ilara's voice is a low whisper, but it cuts through the silence like a razor. They tell you God's mind is a mystery. They lie. The mind of God is order. It is logic, but the most dangerous magic is the kind that works. The knowledge allows a village like yours to be independent, to build its own aqueduct and have clean water without begging a distant lord, to raise a breakwater that guarantees a catch for your fishermen without paying tithes to a bishop for the privilege of not starving. Self-sufficiency is a weapon, and those in power have always understood one thing with perfect, chilling clarity. You don't just control people by holding a sword to their throat. You control them by controlling the things they need to live. Their water. It proves the most dangerous conspiracies aren't the ones you can see unfolding in the headlines, but the ones you read about in history books, disguised as the natural course of events. You look up from the glowing screen into the dark corners of the room, and a single drop of sweat traces a cold path down your temple. A thought, terrifying and unavoidable, takes root in your mind. This manifesto isn't just a record of the past. It's a blueprint. This wasn't a conversion. It was a sophisticated psychological operation, a rebranding. It's the same tactic that will be used in your distant future, a timeless strategy of human control. It's the corporation that buys its rival and wraps its new, inferior product in the old, trusted packaging. It's the political party that seizes power and cloaks its radical agenda in the familiar, patriotic symbols of the nation it has conquered. They didn't save your soul. They just changed the logo on your faith. They knew that you can't simply erase what people believe. The only sounds are the frantic thumping of your own heart against your ribs and the brittle crackle of the parchment under your trembling fingers. A noise as loud as a scream in the stone silence. You unroll it carefully. It's not vellum, made from the skin of a good Christian calf. It's something older, rougher. Papyrus, perhaps, smuggled from the sun-scorched lands of the heathens. The ink is faded, a ghostly brown. But the lines are impossible. You trace them with a fingertip, raw from winter chill. The air is cold enough to make your teeth ache, thick with the smell of damp earth and the faint, sweet rot of decaying linen from the tombs you've passed. You run your fingers along the wall, and the gritty stone scrapes against your nails, the sound unnervingly loud in the crushing silence. You're following a map, one you found pressed between the pages of the monk's journal. A map that doesn't lead to a saint's tomb or a martyr's altar. It leads deeper. It leads to a place that shouldn't exist. The tunnel narrows. This is the oldest trick in the Book of Power. It's the same logic that drives the 24/7 news cycle that sells you anxiety. The same social media algorithm that has learned outrage is the surest way to hold your attention. A population that fears itself is a population that can be controlled. You walk home, the priest's words clinging to you like grave dust. The familiar path feels alien. You see old Alara's cottage, smoke curling from her chimney, and you don't think of the poultice she gave you for your bad back. But it is a heaven you do not recognize. There is no celestial throne, no host of angels. In the center, blazing with gold leaf, is the sun. Around it, suspended in perfect, elegant circles, are the planets. You see a tiny blue-green sphere labeled Terra, Earth. Not the center of God's creation, but a mere speck of dust, spinning in a cosmic dance with other similar specks. A collective gasp ripples through the small crowd. This is a power that 99% of people throughout history will never even know existed. They'll be taught that ancient technology was primitive, that the past was a long, dark slide into ignorance before our own enlightened age. They are wrong. You are living proof. You are building with a substance so advanced, so miraculous, that nothing will match it for another 1,500 years. You watch a hairline fracture in a week-old block begin to fill itself, a web of white crystal knitting the wound closed like living skin. It's magic. We gave them demons to fight so they would not fight us. We gave them a god in the sky so they would not see the kings on the earth. The fall was not a tragedy, it was a necessity. The hum of the scanner suddenly sounds like a scream trapped behind glass. The fall of Rome wasn't a collapse. It was a controlled demolition, an inside job. Just a few feet beneath you, directly under the altar, lies the circular foundation of a pagan shrine. This isn't holy ground, it's hijacked ground. The saint they call Owen of Ruin, the one with the strange wheel, that is the symbol of Tyrannus, the Celtic god of thunder and sky, the old sun king whose followers met on this very hill to watch the solstice. They didn't defeat the old religion, they absorbed it. The miracles attributed to the saint, commanding the sky, bringing light in darkness, are just retellings of the old gods' myths, whispered in a new language. The parchment in your hands is a death sentence. What 99% of people will never understand is that this map doesn't show you where to go. It shows you what you've been trapped inside. The candle gutters, and your shadow writhes on the damp stone walls like a soul trying to escape its body. Your breath is a small white cloud in the biting air of the scriptorium. Every other monk is asleep, lost in dreams of a world you now know is a lie. They teach you the catacombs were just hiding places and burial grounds, a refuge for a persecuted faith, carved into the soft tufa stone beneath Rome. But they don't want you to know the real secret buried down here, a truth far more dangerous than any religion. It's a secret that, if known, would rewrite 1,000 years of history. Your torch sputters, a lone, angry star in an ocean of absolute black. The sudden, orchestrated explosion of demonology, witch hunts, and public penance wasn't a grassroots panic. It was a masterclass in social engineering. They manufactured a culture of constant, ambient fear to shatter the bonds of community, to break the trust between families, to make you so terrified of your neighbor that you would run into the arms of the only authority promising salvation. The priest's finger, pale and thin, traces the grotesque image. You can almost hear the crinkle of the cheap parchment, a dry, whispering sound, like dead leaves skittering across a grave. Her hands, though stained with ink and dirt, move with a surgeon's grace as she unrolls a length of parchment across a rickety table. The sound is a dry, furtive rustle, like secrets stirring in their sleep. You lean closer, your breath held tight in your chest. You expect to see an illustration from a banned gospel, a different version of Christ's life. That is a truth dangerous enough to get you burned. But what you see is 1,000 times more dangerous. It is not a holy text. It is a map of the heavens. Something whispered. You watch as they pour in the final ingredient, a pale, ashy sand scraped from the guts of a sleeping volcano. This is the key, the alchemical secret. The rhythmic crunch and slosh of their shovels is the sound of permanence being born. This is the recipe for stone that heals itself. Stone that drinks seawater and grows harder, angrier, more stubborn with every passing year. You're not just building a harbor wall. You are creating a scar on the world that time cannot erase. A thing that will outlast empires. It's the same logic that builds walls, censors books, and edits the truth in our own time, all to protect us. They saw the brilliance of Rome, its science, its art, its complex philosophies, not as a triumph, but as a symptom of a disease, a prideful sickness that had to be cured with the brute force of ignorance. Your blood runs cold as you read the final translated paragraph. His words are not a lament, they are a boast. We did not lose the fire, we quenched it. We did not forget the path, we buried it. Your fingernails scrape against the rough stone as you clench your fists in prayer, a sound like dirt being clawed away from a secret. What the priests don't want you to know, what 99% of the faithful kneeling beside you will never learn, is that this entire building is a lie. It's a tombstone placed on the grave of a god they couldn't kill. New archaeological evidence, centuries from your time, will use ground-penetrating radar to confirm the secret your bones already feel. It's the secret, and now that you can see it, you feel it closing in all around you. They drag her out into the cold night. You are left alone, the air filled with the scent of her spilled wisdom, and a single, terrifying question begins to burn behind your eyes. They have taken the healer. Who will they come for next? The girl who watched it all happen? He gives you a list of signs, a catalog of terrors, a sudden chill in a room, a dream of falling, a curdled pot of milk. Your stomach clenches. You've felt all of these things. What the church doesn't want you to know is that this isn't faith. It's a calculated strategy of psychological warfare. With the Roman legions a distant memory, a tiny, literate elite needed a new way to control the illiterate millions. They couldn't rule by the sword, so they ruled by the soul. There are a dozen of you, huddled together, your faces pale and haunted in the flickering dance of a single tallow candle. Its light catches the tremor in your neighbor's hand, the desperation in a young woman's eyes. These are the faces of the damned, the ones the priests warn you about from the pulpit. Devil worshippers, corruptors, heretics. But here, in the suffocating dark, there are no cloven hooves or whispered pacts with demons. There is only a woman named Ilara. Her face is lined not with malice, but with a weariness that seems ancient. The secret to building forever wasn't lost, it was murdered. You feel the sun on your back, a hot hand pressing you toward the earth. Your own hands are raw, plunged wrist-deep into a slurry of grit and fire. Before you, the sea breathes in and out, a slow, eternal rhythm. The air tastes of salt and sharp lime, a flavor that coats your tongue and promises something new. Around you, men grunt and heave, their muscles straining in the light. They are mixing, not mud, not simple mortar that will crack and crumble in a generation, but something else, to prune what they called the arrogant tree of human knowledge. Before it grew so tall, it cast a shadow on heaven itself. They weren't saving books. They were choosing which ones to burn. This is the historical fact that shatters a world of assumptions. The Dark Ages weren't a passive decay, a slow forgetting. They were an induced coma, an act of sabotage on a civilizational scale. The words on the screen feel less like ancient text and more like a modern manifesto. The kind of cold, paternalistic logic that justifies any atrocity for the greater good. You kneel, the damp chill of the flagstones seeping through the thin wool of your leggings, a familiar ache you've been taught to call piety. The air is thick, almost suffocating, with the sweet, cloying smoke of frankincense. It's the scent of God. But on damp days like this, when the rain has softened the earth outside, another smell pushes its way up through the cracks in the floor. It's a scent older than the church, older than the Christ on the cross. The wet, loamy perfume of sacrificial earth, of ground that has been fed for 1,000 years. It is not cloudy. It is perfectly, impossibly clear. Your blood runs cold. They have a different well, a deep well, a hidden spring, a sealed Roman cistern from the world beneath your feet. The water that keeps their children safe is not the water that is killing yours. And you realize, with a dread so profound, it feels like the plague has already taken you, that this isn't about God's will. It is about theirs. The real sickness isn't the fever or the boils. One of the guards, a young man named Stefan, whose newborn you saw your mother save from the choking sickness just last winter, shoves her toward the door. He won't meet her eyes. As she stumbles past the doorframe, the leather satchel at her hip, the one holding her life's work, catches on a nail and tears. A cloud of crushed leaves and powdered roots erupts, dusting the dirt floor. Yarrow for staunching blood, meadowsweet for fevers, St. John's wort for troubled minds. A universe of knowledge, a library of healing, settles like common dust at their feet. 99% of the people in this square have never seen an image so profane, so terrifyingly real. You can hear the collective intake of breath, a single, sharp gasp from 100 lungs. This is a new kind of sermon. not a story of forgiveness, but a technical manual for hell. He tells you how the devil recruits. He doesn't work through kings or knights, but through your neighbor, through the widow who knows too much of herbs, through the farmer whose cows give more milk than yours, through the child who wakes from a fever speaking nonsense. They told you the greatest sin was heresy. What 99% of people never learn is that the most dangerous heresy wasn't a different prayer, it was a different equation. The cold seeps through your thin wool tunic, a damp, living thing that leaches the warmth from your bones. You are in a cellar, somewhere beneath a baker's shop, and the air is thick with the smell of wet earth, stale wine, and fear. The metallic taste of it coats your tongue. But as the ink-stained scholars worked late into the night, another fragment was just translated. It's not about prayer. It's not about saints. It's a direct warning, a piece of forbidden medical wisdom they tried to erase from time itself, and it changes everything we thought we knew about what they were truly afraid of. The author's name, hidden in the cipher, is one you recognize from the histories of the late empire. A philosopher of renown, a man of staggering intellect who vanished from public life to join a monastery. They said he went to find God. The words on your screen say he went to bury him. He confesses his role in a cabal he calls the custodians of the soul. Their purpose was not to preserve knowledge. It was to curate it. The saint carved into the stone above the altar holds a wheel. The priest tells you it represents the wheel of life, or perhaps the cart that carried his martyred body to its final rest. But you know the look of a cartwheel. It's rough-hewn wood and iron rim, and this isn't it. This one is perfect, symmetrical, a sunburst captured in cold gray stone. It's a question that hangs in the air, a detail that doesn't fit the holy story. They didn't create the disease, but they curated the conditions for it to become a holocaust. They watched the fire spread, all while holding the bucket of water. You look up from the Roman stone at your feet. You are thirsty, but the thought of the public well, its rope slimy with the grime of 100 sick hands, makes your stomach clench. Then you see it. A guardsman emerges from the high gates of the local lord's manor. He carries a wooden bucket, and from it, he pours a splash of water onto the ground. It is not brown. This is an act of social engineering, so complete, so brutally effective, that its ghosts still haunt us. Every time a woman's expertise is dismissed as intuition, every time her authority is questioned in a way a man's never would be, you are hearing the faint crackle of a pyre lit 7 centuries ago. It's the foundational lie that our world was built on, that power was naturally and always in the hands of men. It wasn't. It was taken. The deadliest weapon in your world was never the sword. It was a story whispered from a pulpit into the ear of a hungry, frightened world. The priest's voice isn't like the old rector's, soft with age and ale. This man is new. His voice is a blade, sharp and cold, carving fear into the damp air of the village square. He holds up a piece of paper, a woodcut, black with cheap ink. On it, a demon with a goat's head and a woman's body suckles a distorted child. The candle gutters, casting dancing demons on the stone. Your next move will decide if you die a martyr for a lie or a heretic for the truth. It was the greatest medical crime in human history, and it was a secret buried under the foundations of every cathedral in Europe. That ancient scroll we told you about, the one recovered from a heretical monastery. Its first deciphered fragment seems to confirm it all. It speaks not of scripture, but of policy. It reads, "We must purge the flesh to save the spirit." Was medicine the first enemy they targeted? Was the surgeon's healing hand the first thing they declared unholy? We thought that was the most chilling part. A code used by philosophers and generals, not monks. The letters resolve on the monitor, glowing in eerie green. The algorithm stitches the words together, and you lean closer. The only sound in the world, the frantic, silent thumping of your own heart against your ribs. This is not a witness statement. This is a confession. The metallic taste of adrenaline coats your tongue as the first lines render. I was there when the eagles fell. I was not a mourner. I was an architect. Your breath catches. The secret isn't that you're about to be tried by combat. The secret is that they've already taken everything from you, long before you ever stepped into this room. All that's left to take is your last breath. It's a chillingly timeless strategy. A public health crisis becomes a private power grab. The suffering of the many becomes the opportunity of the few. The greatest lie ever told is that medieval people were primitive. They lived on the ruins of a civilization that had underfloor heating and public libraries. The knowledge wasn't gone, it was hoarded. This wasn't a technological regression. It was a deliberate, strategic dismantling of public good for private gain. The plague consolidated wealth and land in the hands of the surviving lords and the church on a scale that conquest never could. She is a landowner in a world where lords want a monopoly on land. She is a leader in a world where men want a monopoly on power. They aren't burning a witch. They are eliminating the competition. What historians have deliberately ignored for centuries is the truth they buried with these women. In many of the pre-Christian societies they conquered, power and property were passed down through the mother's line. The new order had to burn that world out of memory to build its own. It was a signal for him. You remember the priest's prayers, the useless poultices, the smell of her dying. You remember holding her hand as her life slipped away. The cure was here. It existed. It was written down. And the men you serve, the men you call holy, chose not just to hide it, but to burn it. They weren't afraid of what they didn't know. They were afraid of what you might know. And now you are holding the evidence of their crime, a crime that has cost millions of lives, including one that you loved. But a sick, terrified population, one that believes its only hope for survival lies in prayer and penance, that is a controllable population. It's the same terrifying logic that echoes in our own world, isn't it? When institutions with immense power and profit motives discredit cheap, simple, effective remedies in favor of their own patented trillion-dollar solutions. Who benefits when a cure is forbidden? Who profits from your pain? They replaced a system of knowledge with a system of control, and it cost millions of lives over 1,000 years. Before you, under the unblinking eye of a multispectral scanner, lies the last fragment. A piece of charred papyrus, no bigger than your hand, recovered from the ashes of a monastery library burned 1,000 years ago. For decades, it was considered nothing more than a witness statement, the last words of a monk who saw the flames. But the scanner sees what the human eye cannot. It peels back the layers of soot and time. revealing letters ghosting beneath the surface. Faint, elegant, and written in a cipher that took 3 years to break. A rare Roman cipher. He sees a disruption to his dinner. He points the greasy tip of his dagger toward you, then toward the hulking, silent man standing in the corner. The man they call the Ox. He says he's innocent, the Lord grunts to the room at large. A few sycophants chuckle. Let God decide. He has just pronounced your sentence. Not a sentence of guilt or innocence, but a sentence of brutal, arbitrary chance. Your life will be decided by the swing of a club. The metallic taste of fear floods your mouth. They have the energy to question, the strength to rebel. But a people terrified of a sickness they believe is a punishment from God? A people whose lives are a daily struggle against filth and fever. They don't demand better rulers. They beg for divine mercy. They trade their freedom for a promise of salvation. They hand over their land, their labor, their last silver coin to the very men who are reading the cure in a locked room. It is a weapon of mass destruction wielded not with steel, but with calculated neglect. The priest saw a miracle, but one that didn't belong to him. He saw a power he could not control. Her real crime wasn't sorcery, it was competence. 99% of people believe the great witch hunts were about satanic pacts and dark magic. What they don't want you to know is that it was the most successful smear campaign in human history. It wasn't a war on Satan. It was a war on women's knowledge. It was a hostile takeover. Your mother is a healer in a world where the church wants a monopoly on healing. You are witnessing the birth of a lie that your descendants will be told for centuries. Suddenly, General Valerius looks up. His eyes, cold and dark, seem to find you in the shadows of the watchtower. He saw you see. He knows you know the truth. The army outside the walls is no longer the greatest threat to your life. The real monster is the one wearing a Roman eagle, the one who just sold your world for a crown of rubble and a toast of poisoned wine. And you realize the horn wasn't a warning for the town. Your eyes scan the forbidden titles, names of texts you have never heard of, treatises on the nature of the atom, histories of kings who were not in the Bible. And then you see it, a title that makes the blood drain from your face. De Morbium Curatori per Manum, on the curing of sickness by the hand. Beside it, a small, desperate note, a way to cut the rot from the body, clean, without prayer or potion. You see your sister's face, 12 years old, her legs swollen and black with infection last winter. But tools weren't all buried. The truth, the one that historians rarely speak of, is that this medical regression was a deliberate act of suppression. Knowledge was not lost, it was declared demonic. The church taught you that sickness was a punishment from God, a stain on your soul. A tumor was a physical manifestation of sin. A broken bone was a trial of faith. Why would you need a surgeon to purge the flesh when a priest could purge the spirit? A healthy, educated population asks questions. It innovates. It seeks power for itself. The fall of Rome wasn't an accident. It was a crime scene. And for 1,500 years, the case has been cold. 99% of people believe it was a slow, tragic death by 1,000 cuts. Barbarians, corruption, economic collapse. But the truth is, the body wasn't found with 1,000 cuts. It was found with a single, perfectly placed dagger, and the killer's fingerprints were wiped clean from the hilt of history itself. Tonight, you are the one who finds the print. The air in the lab is cold, sterile, smelling of ozone from the humming machinery. When they convince you that your rights are not inherent, but are a gift from them, a privilege granted for your good behavior. They can take them away for any reason. They can create secret courts, build surveillance networks, and declare you an enemy without trial. They just need to convince you that your safety is more important than your freedom, that their power is the only thing protecting you from the darkness. The Lord finally looks at you, his eyes empty of reason or empathy. He doesn't see a father, a son, a human being. It is a Roman text, De Architectura, and its elegant Latin describes, in crystalline detail, the principles of hydraulics, sanitation, and civil engineering. He copies diagrams of aqueducts, schematics for public baths, and warnings about building settlements near stagnant marshes. As his quill scratches across the vellum, a dry, whispering sound against the roar of death outside, he is preserving the very knowledge that could save millions. He is also ensuring it remains locked away, a secret for the powerful, a mystery to the dying. Why? Because a healthy, educated, prosperous population is a dangerous population. Her hands, the hands that set the bailiff's son's leg and stitched a wound on a man now holding a spear against her, are bound with rough hemp rope. You can hear it, the dry, scraping sound of the fibers biting into her skin. The new priest is there, his face a pale moon of triumph in the flickering torchlight. Just last week, you watched her work, a feverish child, skin burning to the touch. The priest had offered prayers. Your mother offered a tea brewed from willow bark. By morning, the fever was gone. They needed a scapegoat, an external enemy to blame for the collapse they themselves engineered. The barbarians were the perfect tool, a manufactured crisis to smash the old order so the schemers could rise from the ashes as the new feudal kings and lords. They create the disease so they can sell you their cure. It's a pattern that will echo for 1,000 years, a foreign threat, a moral panic. A manufactured enemy, all used to seize power and convince the terrified masses to trade their freedom for a promise of safety. As you reach for the next page, your finger catches on a small tear, a secret pocket, a foolscap tucked inside the binding centuries ago by another librarian, a pagan trying to save one last thought. Your breath catches. It's not a text, it's a list, written in a frantic, fading hand. The title reads, Que igni tradenda sunt, those things which must be given to the fire. This is not a list of books to be edited. This is a list of books to be utterly annihilated. He tells you it is a fragment from the finger of a saint. He tells you to have faith. He presses the relic to your corrupted skin. The dry scrape of it against your flesh is a horrifying ASMR whisper of your own death. He murmurs a prayer in a language you don't understand, his words lost in the groans of the dying men and women around you. 99% of people believe that the intricate medical knowledge of Rome simply vanished, lost in the fires and chaos of a collapsing empire. But the books didn't all burn. But behind their anger, you see the glint of something else. It isn't just fear, it's greed. They didn't just come to destroy your miracle, they came to claim it. You can hear the scrape of his ring against the wooden arm of the throne, a sound like a nail being dragged across a coffin lid. Every fiber of your being screams at the injustice, but the scream has nowhere to go. There is no court of appeal. There is no higher authority than the man currently deciding if your life is worth less than the wine in his cup. This is the chilling blueprint for control, a pattern that echoes through the centuries. The The horrifying truth, the secret they buried deeper than any Roman road, is that the knowledge wasn't lost, it was suppressed. Miles away, inside the thick stone walls of a monastery, a different world exists. Here, the air is clean, scented with beeswax and old parchment. A young monk, his hands unstained by disease, hunches over a desk in the scriptorium. The light from a high arched window illuminates the page he is copying. It's not a Bible. Before they called her a witch, they called her for help. The word that will destroy your world isn't plague or war. It's a name they will give your mother. You are small, hiding behind a stack of firewood in the corner of your cottage. The air, usually sweet with drying chamomile and rosemary, is now thick with the metallic tang of fear and the sour smell of sweat from the Lord's men. Through a crack between two logs, you watch. Your mother does not scream. She does not beg, not as conqueror and conquered, but as partners. A servant brings forth a silver ewer, and you hear the delicate, liquid whisper of wine being poured into goblets, an ASMR trigger of civility in the heart of the most profound treason. They drink, sealing a deal written in the blood of the very empire Valerius swore to protect. This is the secret that changed everything. Corrupt Roman senators and generals, hungry for power in a dying system, formed secret alliances. They didn't want to save the empire. They wanted to break it into pieces they could rule themselves. But all of it contradicted the New World Order. All of it gave power to the individual, not the institution. So it was locked away, edited like your page from Aristotle, or declared heresy. They don't have to burn the library if they own it. It's the same tactic you see in your own time, when a government uses national security to classify a damning report, or when a media corporation pushes a single profitable narrative while silencing every dissenting voice. The goal isn't to destroy the information. It's to control who has access to it. A single candle flickers, casting long, dancing shadows on the damp stone walls. Your leg is black. The infection has crept past your knee, and the fever makes your teeth chatter so hard you think they might break. You can hear your own fingernails scraping against the rough wool of your blanket, a tiny, desperate sound in the near silence. There is no surgeon here. There is only a monk, his face pale in the gloom. He isn't holding a scalpel. He is holding a piece of bone, yellowed with age, wrapped in a dirty cloth. The iron bolt on your door groans, straining against the force from outside. They found you. You look at your beautiful, impossible machine, the metal bird still flapping its wings in the flickering lamplight. You have just enough time to feel the metallic taste of pure terror flood your mouth. They are shouting now, their voices muffled but filled with divine fury. They don't just want to stop you. They want to erase the very possibility of you. As the heavy oak door shatters inward, you see the dark robes and the cold, merciless eyes. They conquered the very idea that you were born with anything that wasn't theirs to give. They replaced jurisprudence with divine right. They replaced evidence with whim. This is the great legal secret of the Dark Ages. Your enslavement wasn't just physical, bound by chains and labor. It was metaphysical. They erased the concept of your innate human rights from the world, and in its place, they built this: a cold room, a bored lord, and the absolute certainty of his power. They say the old ones who laid these stones were pagans, that their knowledge of clean water, of stone channels, that carried waste away from the city was a form of hubris that God himself struck down. This squalor, the priest insists, is humility, but it feels a lot like a tomb. 99% of people believe this ancient knowledge was simply lost in the chaos of a fallen empire. But you don't lose the knowledge of how to keep your children from dying of dysentery. You don't forget how to separate drinking water from human filth. But her reality is this land, this Lord, this life. You see the future in her eyes, and it is a perfect, repeating circle of dirt and obligation. The Lord's reeve is coming tomorrow to count the harvest, and you know there will not be enough to pay the tithe and to feed your family through the winter. The system is designed this way. It is designed to make you fail, so you must borrow. And the only thing you have left to offer as collateral is your freedom, forever. New archaeological evidence from border towns like yours reveals the forbidden truth that for decades there has been trade, cooperation, even intermarriage. You've seen it yourself, the traders with their amber and furs, the Goth mercenary who married the baker's daughter, the children with hair like spun gold and Roman eyes. We weren't just neighbors. We were becoming one people. The line between us and them was a convenient lie, a story told by men in faraway cities. And now you understand why. The chieftain dismounts, and he and your commander, General Valerius, clasp forearms. They were not vandals, they were curators. They created a monopoly on information, hoarding texts on engineering, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy in fortified monastery vaults. They became the gatekeepers of reality itself. This is the secret that changed everything. The Dark Ages weren't a period of ignorance, but a period of enforced ignorance. They had diagrams for steam engines from the mind of Hero of Alexandria, capable of powering machines. They had astronomical charts from Babylon that mapped the heavens with terrifying accuracy. They had surgical techniques from Galen that could have saved millions from dying in agony. The survival rates for these procedures, performed on the literal battlefield, were higher than anything Europe would see for the next 1,500 years. This is a world of knowledge, of cause and effect, of science. Now, close your eyes, open them. The world has changed. The clean, sharp scent of wine is gone. You are in a different bed, in a different time. The air is thick, sweet, and rotten. It's the unmistakable smell of gangrene, mingled with incense and the sour odor of unwashed bodies crammed together in the dark. The powerful have always feared what they cannot control, what they cannot mediate, what they cannot own. Your whirring, hissing sphere of brass is the ancestor of the silicon chip, a thing of terrifying potential that threatens to give power to the powerless. They buried your secret and the secrets of men like you under a millennium of enforced ignorance. They taught generations to fear the very idea of progress. The sudden, heavy thump on your workshop door makes you freeze. Your blood turns to ice. It's not the knock of a friend. It is solid, authoritative. Wood splinters. What 99% of people will never understand, what has been so violently erased from memory, is that this powerlessness is new. Your great-grandfather, a man who lived under the shadow of the old empire's laws, he had rights. He could appeal to a law written on a scroll, a system, however flawed, that was larger than one man's temper. He could speak of precedent and witness. He was a person in the eyes of the law. You are merely a thing in the eyes of a lord. they didn't just conquer your land. You must pray. You must give what little you have to the church to save your immortal soul, even as your mortal body blackens and bloats. You look down at the ground, at the foul water pooling around your worn leather shoes. Your foot nudges something hard beneath the mud. A stone. Not a rough field stone, but a flat, perfectly squared paver. A relic from another time, another world. A ghost of the Roman road that lies buried under 1,000 years of accumulated filth. You are the flock. The fields you work are the pen. Tonight, you look at your daughter. She is 5 years old and has never seen a paved road. She has never tasted anything not grown within walking distance. She believes the world ends at the dark woods on the horizon, because for her, it does. You remember the stories your grandfather told, of a world so vast and interconnected it seemed magical. That world is now a fairy tale you tell your child, a story of a time when people could fly. And that's when you see them, the men opening the gates where the familiar leather and iron of your own garrison. Your centurion, Marcus, stands there, his face a mask of grim purpose, nodding to the chieftain at the front of the tribal host, a giant of a man with braided hair and a cloak of wolf pelts. This wasn't a conquest, it was a handover, a business transaction with an entire civilization as the price. What 99% of history will never tell you is this: the barbarian invasions were not a surprise attack. They were an inside job. The story they will tell is of fire, of barbarians at the gates, and the grand, tragic burning of the Library of Alexandria. A terrible, uncontrollable accident. But that is a lie spun to hide a truth 1,000 times more terrifying. The knowledge wasn't destroyed in a single glorious blaze. It was stolen, piece by piece, in cold, quiet rooms, just like this one. For centuries, agents of the rising faith and power-hungry nobles conducted the most sophisticated heist in human history. They didn't burn the libraries of the old world. They raided them. Around the tent, other men are having arrowheads pulled from their chests with long, slender forceps. Another surgeon uses a delicate-looking hook to remove a tumor from a centurion's neck. They have tools for trepanation, for drilling into the skull to relieve pressure on the brain. They have scalpels, bone levers, and catheters, all made of sterile, cleanable bronze. Archaeologists are still digging these kits out of the mud in Germany and Britain, and they are shockingly, terrifyingly advanced. You see the cold fury in their eyes, the certainty of their righteousness. They would not call this progress. They would call it hubris, heresy, demonic artifice. They would hold up a cross to it, and when it did not burst into flames, they would smash it with a hammer, proclaiming they had defeated a devil's idol. This is the eternal war, the one that never ends. It's the same conflict that echoes in the future, in arguments over artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and the free flow of information. The accusation is a phantom, a whisper of smoke in this cold stone hall. But the truth no longer matters. The only thing that matters is the man on the throne, picking a piece of gristle from his teeth with the tip of a dagger. You stand on the damp flagstones, your bare feet numb with cold. You can smell the sour wine on his breath from 10 paces away. You can see the flicker of the firelight in his bored, indifferent eyes. This is your judge, your jury, and your God. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. It is the oldest and most effective lie in the history of power. A lie that echoes today in every predatory loan, in every monopoly that crushes a small business, in every system designed to make you feel grateful for the very chains they forged for you. You heard a traveling monk, his eyes wild with forbidden knowledge, whisper of a burned scroll he'd once seen. It was a letter from one warlord to another, outlining the strategy. It didn't speak of war or conquest. It spoke of economics. It described how to return the flock to the pen. Your eyes strain in the gloom, and then you hear it. A sound so out of place, it makes the hair on your arms stand up. It's not the sound of destruction, but of mechanics. The dry, protesting groan of a heavy iron bolt being drawn back, followed by the deep, scraping thud of the crossbar being lifted from its cradle. The sound is coming from inside the walls. You watch, paralyzed, as the massive oak gates swing inward, not with a crash, but with a slow, deliberate majesty. They aren't being broken down. They are being opened. The new ink is dark, absolute. Over the ghost of Aristotle's logic, you write the correction, the holy edit that will be copied and recopied for centuries, solidifying into gospel. As God wills, 5 syllables to replace a universe of questions. You pull back, your heart a cold knot in your chest. Is this piety, or is it the deepest blasphemy? You push the thought down. It is a demon's whisper, because what 99% of people will never understand, what your masters are ensuring they never understand, is that this act is the real cataclysm. You are on the edge of the world, or Roman frontier, and the man on the cot beside you is having his leg sawn off. You can hear it, the rhythmic wet grating of a bronze saw chewing through bone with a brutal, practiced efficiency. The surgeon, his forearms stained a deep crimson, doesn't chant or pray. He calls for more wine, not for drinking, but for washing. He pours it directly into the mangled stump, and the legionary, biting down on a leather strap, only groans. This is not butchery. This is a system. Science provides answers, and answers are a threat to their monopoly on truth. You run a hand over the cool brass of your creation. You imagine a world filled with such things. Carts that move without horses. Pumps that could drain the fever swamps. Machines that could lift the stone for their cathedrals in a day, not a decade. An industrial revolution, 1,000 years ahead of schedule. A world without so much back-breaking toil, without so much needless suffering. But as you watch the steam vent from a tiny copper pipe, you see the faces of the bishop's men. It is a weight, a stone that will drag you to the bottom of the Inquisitor's drowning pool. You have to hide it. You have to destroy it. But the thought is a new kind of sacrilege. To burn this would be to help them lock the cage forever. The shadow under the door moves, blocking the faint moonlight from the hall. You are no longer alone with the secret. You are trapped with it. The great pestilence was not a tragedy. For the men who held the keys to the past, it was a strategy. The air is thick enough to chew. It tastes of wood smoke, human waste, and something else. Something sweet and rotten. The scent of death trying to mask itself with piety. You pull your thin woolen cloak tighter, but the damp cold of the street seeps into your bones anyway. A cart rumbles over the broken cobbles, its wheels sinking into the river of mud and filth that is your road. What they don't want you to know is that the new feudal masters understood economics better than any modern banker. They understood that true power isn't in gold, but in the control of systems. They tracked you, They trapped your neighbors. They created a closed loop, a company town the size of a kingdom, where they owned the land, the food, the law, and the money. And then they called the bars of your prison protection. The horn's single, gut-wrenching blast echoes across the misty valley. The metallic taste of fear, coppery and sharp, floods your mouth. You grip the cold, damp stone of the watchtower, your knuckles white, your breath a ghost in the pre-dawn chill. This is the moment every story, every drill, every waking nightmare has prepared you for. The horde is at the gates. The end has come, but something is wrong. Down below, there is no splintering wood, no thunder of a battering ram. There are no war cries, only a low, expectant murmur from the assembled host outside. You place the blade against a line of Greek, a sentence about observing the world to find truth, about empirical evidence. You hold your breath, the air tasting of stale wax and old paper, and you begin to scrape. The sound is the only thing in the universe. A faint, dry shick, shick, as the iron gall ink flakes away, turning to black dust. It's an ASMR quality sound of truth being unwritten. You are murdering a thought. When the line is gone, a pale scar on the skin of the page, you dip your quill. The cure for your infection already existed 1,000 years before you were born. The knowledge to save your shattered leg, to cut the sickness from your belly, was written down, practiced, and perfected while your ancestors were still painting their faces and worshiping trees. What they don't want you to know is that this knowledge wasn't lost. It was murdered. Breathe in. The air is sharp with the tang of cheap wine, and something else, hot, coppery, and alive. But the new power, the one building cathedrals to dominate the sky, cannot allow it. Why? Because your little steaming bird doesn't need a prayer to fly. It doesn't require a miracle from a saint or the blessing of a priest. It operates on principles, on laws. It suggests the universe is a machine to be understood, not just a mystery to be feared. And a population that understands how the world works is infinitely harder to control than one that believes demons cause the plague and that salvation can only be purchased from the man in the pulpit. He believes knowledge is a sin, a shortcut to damnation. You quickly, desperately try to roll the map. The parchment resists, its crinkling sound an act of betrayal. You hold your breath, straining to hear over the blood roaring in your ears. Another sound, not a creak this time, a soft, wet scrape. Fingernails against the wood on the other side of the door. Someone is listening. Someone knows you are in here with this unforgivable truth. The map is no longer a key. Our monk, the man whose story you've been following, he knew about this place. The question is, was he one of its guardians, a secret scholar, preserving the light of reason? Or was he an infiltrator, cataloging this library for the very men who held the torches? But a man whose entire world is a 10-mile radius, whose only currency is a token of his own subjugation. That man is a serf. He is a resource. He is livestock. You feel the weight of one of the Lord's tokens in your hand. It's not the bright, satisfying clink of silver. It's a dull, lifeless thud. It is the sound of a closing door. This is the ASMR of your new reality, the hollow sound of dependency. This wasn't a collapse. It was a planned demolition, a great culling of freedom. And you have to wonder, as the flames of history close in, how many other seeds were planted in the dark, still waiting, buried in forgotten soil for the right moment to grow. Vellum, scraped so thin you can almost see the ghost of the sheep it came from. The words on it are not yours. They were written by a man named Aristotle, a pagan who has been dust for over a millennium. His mind was a sun, brilliant and blinding, but he did not know the light of the one true God. That is your task, to bring him into the light, to correct him. Your fingers tremble slightly as you lift the knife. Its edge is honed for this exact purpose. Not to cut, but to erase. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. 99% of people will be taught that this was an age of darkness, 1,000 years of technological stagnation between the fall of Rome and the rise of the Renaissance. They will be wrong. It was not a period of stagnation. It was a period of deliberate, brutal suppression. You are living the proof. The knowledge exists. The blueprints for steam-powered automata, for complex astronomical clocks that could predict the heavens, for a chemistry that bordered on alchemy. It all survived the collapse of the old world, hidden in monastic libraries and the scrolls of forgotten philosophers. His ghost is in this room with you, urging you to see. A floorboard creaks in the corridor outside. You freeze. Your heart stops. The flame of the candle dances wildly, as if in a sudden wind, though the air is still as a tomb. You stare at the thick oak door, at the sliver of blackness beneath it. Is it just the old monastery settling? Or is it Brother Thomas, the abbot's toad, his footsteps always unnaturally silent? He watches you. You've seen the suspicion in his eyes when you spend too long with the pre-Christian texts. It's a text on astronomy, complete with charts of celestial movements, ideas that would get a man burned at the stake in your time. And then you see it. In the margin, sketched in a familiar, precise hand, is a small symbol, a serpent eating its own tail, but with the head of a raven, the Ouroboros. The same symbol etched into the leather of the monk's journal, the one you've been chasing across all these hidden histories. The cold that floods your body now has nothing to do with the tomb. He knew. It's a crude iron token, stamped with his own snarling wolf crest. It has no value 10 miles from here. You can't buy foreign spices with it. You can't save it to buy your son a better life in another province. You can only use it to pay the Lord's taxes or to buy grain from the Lord's storehouse, grain that you grew on land that was once yours. This is the secret that changed everything. A free man is a dangerous man. A man who can sell his goods to anyone is a man who cannot be easily controlled. It is not a soul, she whispers, pressing the heavy parchment into your trembling hands. It is a seed. It only dies if you let it. The cellar door groans as a heavy bar is slammed against it from the outside. Panic erupts, but as the first splinters fly, you are no longer a simple peasant in a hidden room. You are the keeper of a truth that could remake the world, or die in the fire with you. The ashes were a cover story. The real crime, the one that plunged a world into 1,000 years of darkness, was the ink. You feel it now. The cold seeps up from the stone floor, through the thin leather of your shoes, and into your bones. It's a familiar cold, a holy cold. The candle on your desk sputters, a tiny defiant star in the crushing blackness of the scriptorium. Your shadow, a hunched and monstrous thing, writhes on the wall behind you. You are doing God's work. You must believe that. Before you lies the page. Deep within the sealed archives of a forgotten monastery, a single, partially burned scroll was discovered in 1978. It was cataloged as an apocalyptic prayer and ignored. But it wasn't a prayer. It was a witness statement, a confession. It describes a secret society, a group with a terrifying mission: to engineer a great forgetting. They believed knowledge had made humanity arrogant, and to save its soul, its mind had to be broken. They didn't want you to know the truth. This is the story of that theft. The erosion of self-sufficiency isn't done with swords, but with a system that makes you dependent on faceless institutions for your very survival. The most important lesson in all of history, the one they will fight to keep you from learning, is this: power will always seek to create darkness to hide what it is doing. They created a false past, proven by the very stone and bone we've uncovered, to control their present. So the only question left, the one that should echo in the quietest parts of your mind tonight, is this: what are they lying about now? A clockwork songbird, powered by nothing but hot water and forbidden knowledge. It is a toy, a miracle, and if they find it, it is your death warrant. The air is thick with the smell of hot metal, lamp oil, and the damp, earthy scent of fear. You can hear every scrape of a boot on the cobblestones outside, every distant shout, imagining they are all for you. This is the secret that historians, centuries from now, will miss entirely. If they lied about the very shape and size of God's earth, what else did they lie about? The divine right of kings? The miracles of the saints? The price of salvation itself? The questions are a venom, spreading through you, dissolving the certainty that has been your only comfort in a life of hardship. You suddenly feel a profound connection, not to the saints in the chapel, but to the forgotten navigator who drew this line. The heretic who saw the world for what it was and not what he was told it should be. It's the medieval equivalent of the dark web, a hidden, decentralized channel for information the authorities are desperate to suppress. This is the truth behind the Renaissance. It wasn't a sudden, miraculous rediscovery. The knowledge was never gone. It was just waiting. It was protected. You reach out, your fingers trembling as they touch the brittle edge of a scroll. You carefully pull it from its niche. It feels impossibly light, a ghost of a book. You unroll it, and the dry crackle of the ancient paper is the loudest sound you've ever heard. It's heavier than stone, colder than the winter rain that seeps through your thatch roof. The trade routes are gone, not faded, but severed. The bridges were the first to go, not collapsed from age, but torn down, the stones repurposed for the new Lord's tower. The roads, once arteries of commerce protected by legions, are now veins of mud and fear, home only to bandits who, you suspect, answer to the same Lord. They say it's for your protection. Protection is the word they use for a cage. The new Lord has a currency. It is not silver. The candle flame shudders, casting your shadows into a frantic, monstrous ballet against the stone walls. Everyone freezes. The scratching on the slate stops. The weeping becomes a strangled gasp. Another thud, heavier this time. The splintering of wood, shouts. the sound of heavy boots on the floorboards directly over your head. They've found you. Alara doesn't scream. She moves with impossible speed, rolling the precious scroll, her eyes locking onto yours. They are not filled with fear. They are filled with a terrifying, urgent fire. They aren't coming to admire your work. They are coming to make sure it is never repeated. They are coming to bury the recipe. And you, with its secrets still wet on your hands, are the last page of the book they need to burn. You see the phantom of a lead pipe that once brought clean running water. This level of comfort, this basic human dignity, wouldn't be seen again by common people for over 1,000 years. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in the morning fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But what if I told you that ignorance was a weapon, forged by the powerful and aimed at the heart of your past? What if the fall of civilization wasn't an accident, but a demolition? They convinced you that your suffering was God's will. They put civilization in a cage for 1,000 years and told you it was for your own protection. Now, open your eyes. The blueprint never went away. The tactics are just quieter now. The control of information isn't done with burning pyres, but with silent algorithms that build the walls of your reality. The manufacturing of fear isn't done with barbarian hordes, but with endless crisis narratives that keep you glued to your screen, divided and afraid. It is a sphere of polished brass and copper, a web of impossibly fine gears and pistons that you have spent a lifetime assembling from fragmented diagrams, half-remembered whispers from the libraries of Alexandria, secrets traded in port cities for wine and silence. You dip a finger into the basin of cool water, letting a drop fall onto the heated metal. It sizzles, vanishing into a puff of steam. The sphere shudders, and with a series of soft, metallic clicks, a tiny metal bird on top begins to flap its wings. If you believe there is nothing over the horizon but monsters, you will never dare to sail there. You will stay home, tend your fields, pay your tithe, and pray for salvation from the demons they told you were waiting. Control the map, and you control the soul of a civilization. This isn't just about geography. It's the medieval version of a firewall, a state-run media channel that only broadcasts one truth. They have built a prison of belief, and this parchment is the key. The metallic taste of fear floods your mouth. They risked torture and death to smuggle these texts out of burning cities and private collections. Down here, in the flickering lamplight, they meticulously copied them, preserving the genius of humanity while the world above descended into madness. Imagine being one of them, your hands stained with ink, your eyes burning from the smoke, the constant fear of discovery a cold knot in your stomach. Every copied line is a victory. Every preserved scroll is a future you will never see. You remember the sound, a symphony of 100 dialects haggling over silk from the east and amber from the cold north. Your father, a simple farmer, once sold his surplus wheat to a merchant whose ship sailed to Africa. The silver denarius in his purse was a promise that his sweat had value everywhere, that a man could, with his own 2 hands, build a life that touched the edges of the known world. Now, silence. The silence is the loudest sound you know, to make the truth so dangerous to speak that it suffocates in the minds of those who know it. For every Gnostic burned for believing in a hidden feminine aspect of God, 99% of people don't know another was burned for understanding the principles of optics or for preserving Greek astronomical charts. The Inquisition wasn't just a war on faith. It was a scorched earth campaign against information itself, a strategic erasure of competing knowledge. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoes from the street above, the baker's shop. You haven't seen him in 2 weeks. His small hut by the quarry is empty, the hearth cold. You pull your hands from the gritty, warm mixture, the abrasive sand having scrubbed your fingerprints away. You look up from your work, wiping sweat from your brow, and you see them. Riders on the horizon. Not merchants, not soldiers marching to some distant war. Their banners are purple and gold, the sigil of the bishop. They ride with a purpose that feels like an executioner's stride. A cold wave, far colder than the sea, washes over you. The greatest lie ever told wasn't about gods or kings. It was about you. The 99% of your ancestors who were deliberately made to forget they were ever human. You stand in the skeletal remains of what was once a simple farmhouse, the air thick with the ghost scent of wood smoke and century-old rain. You run your fingers over the smooth, broken tiles of a hypocaust system. Heated floors, not for an emperor, but for a farmer. The metallic taste of cold air fills your mouth as you kneel, tracing the grit of broken mortar.